Hello, I'm Alicia Barry. Welcome to the Business Summer Special. We're taking a look back at some of the best stories of 2021, including Don't Let the Rich Get Richer, the millionaires who want a fairer tax system to even up the playing field.
It's unfair that I get these tax breaks that a younger person cannot get because they're just earning a wage.
And Indigenous designers seek brand ownership as conscious consumers ask questions about who's making their clothes.
It's about agency. I think for a long time our affairs have been in other people's hands.
Also on the program, Australia's unmatched signature gem, the famed pink Argyle diamonds, go to auction for the final time. Some millionaires who've benefited from soaring asset prices during the pandemic are calling for a fairer tax system. The price of houses and stocks have skyrocketed over the best part of 2 years, while wage growth remains stubbornly low. It's leading to a widening gap between those who work to survive and those who make their money from assets, as Daniel Ziffer reports.
Rob Palin has always worked hard.
I used to go in and work in the shop on a Saturday morning and Dad would give me $2 bob for the morning's work.
But the chair of retailer Paddy Palin is unhappy with how his income is taxed.
It's unfair that I get these tax breaks that a younger person cannot get because they're just earning a wage.
The value of housing and shares has shot up during the pandemic, but wage growth remains stubbornly low. That's magnifying the impact of the tax system, hitting those who don't have assets and boosting those who do. Anna is studying, volunteering and working in hospitality and retail.
Yeah, it's not unusual for young people to be juggling multiple things just to kind of be able to make it all work living out of home.
The way her income is treated compared to Rob's is vastly different.
Absolutely, it feels rigged.
And that's concerning economists and tax experts.
Different forms of savings have been set to be taxed at different rates.
So he's benefiting from a lot of different tax policies over time that have helped him generate that wealth, alongside his effort.
Rob's income has already been taxed once when he earned it. With that money, he's bought assets. He pays less tax on superannuation concessions. He can negatively gear his investment properties. He gets franking credits on some share dividends. And if he sells real estate or stocks, half the capital gain is exempt from tax.
The sorts of investments that I've got my money into have better tax dealings than someone who's just earning a straight wage.
Actually, I had to look up what franking credits were.
With only work providing her with income, Anna doesn't enjoy those advantages. Wage growth is only 1.7% this year, and it's been sluggish for a decade. Treasury predicts real wages, purchasing power, will go backwards. While property values have soared more than 20% in the year to October.
The ability of young people to get into the housing market is not tied to their income or their effort or their skill, but that of their parents.
Dr. Jackson wants to move the focus from taxing just income.
So what will happen is there'll be an even greater imposition on workers, so on people with labour income. They're going to have to pay more as a percentage of their overall income to support the services that we need.
A growing coalition of the wealthy want change too.
It's obvious that the top 1% has more wealth than the rest of the world, and any solution must be a part of this.
Rob wants the advantages he has to be better shared with people like Anna.
I think we've got to be far more equitable in how we treat people.
To advance Australia, fair.
The Australian live music scene has been devastated by the pandemic. The peak body for the industry says only about 10% of gigs have gone ahead in the last 18 months. While venues are opening again as restrictions are relaxed, it's still far from easy for the sector, which is facing months of financial hardship. Rihanna Whitson reports.
We're going to kick it off. After more than 100 days in lockdown, live music is back in Sydney. Gig goers and musicians couldn't be happier.
It's unreal. The one thing that I've been missing is live music.
I literally just got my double vaccination on Thursday.
At Butcher's Brew Bar, it's a sold-out show for Beck Jensen and the Gold Rockets.
Being here makes me feel human again.
But density caps mean it's not viable for every music venue to reopen.
We had to increase ticket prices so the band gets paid a decent fee, and we just rely on people that come, that they spend a certain amount over the bar to keep us viable. But basically at the moment we're just breaking even.
Before the pandemic, the live music industry was worth an estimated $1.4 billion a year. And for every dollar spent, another $3 went into the economy. Since then, 36,000 jobs have been lost. And in the last financial year, the industry's value has plummeted by 90%. Before COVID-19, Colour nightclub in Melbourne was heaving, with up to 300 people a night on weekends. After being caught up in the world's longest cumulative lockdown, it's one of many live music venues on the brink.
Some have closed their doors, and I know that we've come close for sure.
Colour nightclub is part of the Save Our Scene campaign group, which wants income support until venues can operate at 100% capacity. It says the industry has been left off the state and national roadmaps for reopening.
Venues are crucial to the ongoing success of this city culturally, and kind of our perception as one of the live music capitals of the world, really.
Even when venues like this do reopen, gigs could still be affected by snap lockdowns and border closures. The industry says the ongoing uncertainty means that putting on some shows simply won't be worth the risk. There are also calls for the federal government to back an insurance scheme to protect events from COVID cancellations. A Senate committee is investigating the proposal.
Which is the sort of thing that people are going to need if they're going to be investing time and money in planning a tour that crosses borders.
With band members in 3 states, the cost of hotel quarantine and COVID compliance requirements means Holy Holy is on the verge of cancelling a 20-date tour that's supposed to start next month. If it doesn't go ahead, they won't be able to capitalise on their latest album, which debuted at number 4 on the ARIA album charts.
That is just absolutely devastating. If we do have to postpone the tour, that will mean that we won't be doing shows until probably April, May, June next year, because everybody's looking at trying to get shows at the same time.
Calypso is another musician nervous about her future. She thinks other industries have been given preferential treatment by governments.
There didn't seem to be much dialogue on how we could safely do those things while big sporting events went ahead.
She says some of her peers who have stepped back from the industry may not return.
And I hope people come back because we contribute so much to culture, economy, to mental health. Everyone needs music. I can't imagine a world without music.
An industry devastated, facing months of difficulty ahead.
Until the storm comes.
Way back in June, we anticipated consumers could soon be paying more for goods after shipping costs took a rise during the COVID recovery. Surging demand for products and materials and a shortage of containers has sent freight prices skyrocketing around the world. Local importers feared shipping firms were profiteering, as Sue Lannon reports.
More than a year since the start of the pandemic, business is booming at this plastic and glass supplier in Western Sydney. But high freight costs are keeping owners Jane and Casey Pearson awake at night.
So we've seen a 20% lift in rates in the last 12 months, and that depends on the region. So out of Europe, it might have been even, 50%.
But some clients are paying even more.
We've got a customer from the UK. Now they're seeing more than 840% increase.
So once you open it...
Government stimulus checks and coronavirus restrictions have driven the appetite for products. But that has caused a global traffic jam at the world's ports.
It's obviously COVID impact, huge demand for more shipping, so increased demand, but at the same time, reduced capacity.
Over the past year, the median cost of shipping a 20-foot container from Australia to China has increased to nearly $1,500. The most expensive route from Shanghai to Rotterdam has soared 500%, with a 40-foot box now costing a record $13,500. And the price of transporting those containers from Shanghai to Sydney has doubled to more than $5,500.
Australia is predominantly an importer of goods, so you'll have an excess of empty containers over here. And our shipping lines, I can tell you, in the last 12 months have been working tirelessly in getting those containers out of this country.
That means some vessels are being used to pick up empty containers instead of transporting goods.
We've got one major exporter now who is very happily, with finally getting rains after years of drought. They've got a bumper crop of 20,000 tonnes of chickpeas, but they can't get capacity on any vessels to get to overseas markets.
The director of the Freight and Trade Alliance says the container crisis is challenging global supply chains.
A struggle to get them back to the manufacturers back in China and other parts of Asia in a timely fashion.
Shipping companies have cancelled trips to some ports to speed up journeys, and not enough containers are being manufactured. Shipping Australia boss Melwin Narunha says Australian ports must take some responsibility.
There's a build-up of these empty containers right across the world because of port congestion. And I think port congestion needs to be looked at very carefully.
Some vessels have been unable to dock in China because of trade tensions. And a blockage in the Suez Canal by a huge container ship in March has added to delays. Major retailers like Woolworths are paying more to get imports. The Reject Shop says those costs will be passed on to consumers.
So what we do need is just some level of regulation to make sure that pricing here isn't artificially being inflated.
There is absolutely no economic justification to regulate the shipping industry. It's a huge industry where you have multiple players competing against each other.
The shipping squeeze has affected all sorts of products, from building materials, iron ore and consumer products. For a business like this, it's added hundreds of thousands of dollars to shipping costs.
Jane Pearson says her business has also been forced to put up prices.
There's only so long that we can absorb those costs, so reluctantly we did go to market with an increase earlier this year, but it was a heavily subsidised increase.
She expects those costs to last for the short to medium term. A price hike now being loaded up the supply chain.
The Australian government is fighting a proposed law that would ban kangaroo exports to the United States. America is the second biggest market for the animal products behind the European Union. Activists both here and across the Pacific have long fought to stop the trade, claiming it's inhumane. And a warning some viewers may find material in this story distressing. Nassim Kadem reports.
At sunset, when most of us finish our day, Glenn Cole begins his, killing kangaroos. The Newbridge farmer sells the meat to pet food processors, and the skin gets sent overseas to be used in football boots by companies including Nike and Adidas.
I'm shooting with one shot to kill the animal instantly, and there's other people out there that won't shoot the animal in the head.
Kangaroo exports are worth more than $200 million a year to Australia's economy. The second biggest market is the United States, where a proposed law backed by Democrat and Republican congressmen seeks to ban the exports for good.
The estimate is 400,000 joeys are found in the mother's pouch or at the foot. The code by the government says you're supposed to kill them by blunt force trauma. You hit it against the bumper of your truck. How is this humane?
And with all of the innovation that we have out there today, we don't need to be using kangaroo leather.
But both Nike and Adidas say they source from suppliers using humane treatment. The Australian government's now working behind the scenes to fight the ban.
What they are espousing is a perverse animal welfare outcome that would see millions of kangaroos die of starvation and dehydration.
The federal government estimates there's 43 million kangaroos across Australia. About 2 million of those are killed for commercial use each year. But some scientists and animal rights groups say authorities overstate the numbers to try and paint them as pests. Mr. Cole says even if the US ban goes ahead, it won't stop kangaroo culls by unlicensed shooters.
What I call cowboy shooters. People come out from the weekend from town, think they're the best marksmen in the world and can't hit the broadside of a barn.
His hope is the commercial industry survives.
No animals were killed during the filming of that report. More and more shoppers are becoming more conscious about how their clothes are made and who owns the brands who makes them. While fashion labels have collaborated with Aboriginal artists for years, First Nations designers say having control over their own brand is even more important. Now, one clothing label founded by two non-Indigenous women is making changes at the top. Here's Stephanie Chalmers.
At this pop-up store in Sydney, racks of clothing feature designs by Aboriginal artists. But what these shoppers might not know is this business is Indigenous owned.
It's about agency. I think for a long time our affairs have been in other people's hands.
Until recently, this brand was in other people's hands too. Non-Indigenous women Maggie McGowan and Laura Egan founded Magpie Goose in 2016. They licensed artwork from artists in remote communities that was screen printed onto fabric and then made into garments in a Sydney factory.
So it's really been testing, trying different things and seeing how that works, getting feedback from people we're working with and refining the process.
It wasn't without challenges. Magpie Goose faced criticism about its ownership structure and licensing arrangements on social media. Now, Maggie and Laura have handed control of the business to new owners, including proud Aboriginal man Troy Casey.
I think we're seeing a rising conscious consumer, definitely asking questions about who runs the business, who makes the products, where is it made.
That interest rose last year as the Black Lives Matter movement spurred support for black-owned businesses in the US and beyond. After the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota, protests erupted across the globe, including in Australia. On social media, major brands flooded Instagram feeds with black tiles, ads featuring diverse models and athletes, and statements of solidarity. But for Nigerian-born beauty boss Sharon Shooter, it was a performance that rang hollow.
To then see brands turning up and trying to, market up that moment, almost preaching to their consumers like, you can do better. This is how you should educate yourself. And I was so triggered by that.
She launched Pull Up for Change, a campaign calling on brands to pull up or shut up and disclose their own scorecard on diversity and ownership structures.
It has to go beyond well-crafted corporate statements and actually move into action and accountability. And before you act, you have to firstly recognize that you have a problem. You cannot be preaching to other people about racism when your board is whiter than snow.
In Australia, Indigenous-owned brands also felt the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement.
We had to really ensure that this wasn't a trend that the industry was following. For us, this is not trending. This is our everyday and definitely a movement for us to create a change.
At this year's Australian Fashion Week, Indigenous-owned brands were showcased alongside some of the country's biggest designers.
Merriam-Mer woman Grace Lillian Lee spearheaded the First Nations show and hopes it signals a permanent shift.
We've got some beautiful collaborations with major labels. However, I think that there's always this conversation that needs to be had about what happens to that artist or creative or First Nations person after the fact.
The Fashion Week show broke new ground, and the designers involved aren't looking backwards.
We're really supporting independent, self-determined businesses to create their own labels within the industry, because wouldn't it be great to see a household name?
The new Magpie Goose owners have similar ambitions.
It would be great for this to be an international brand, an Australian iconic brand, a brand that kind of people come to Australia and go, what do I buy? R.M. Williams, Dries a Bone, Magpie Goose.
The future of the brand is in his hands.
Pink diamonds from Western Australia's Kimberley region are arguably the most coveted jewels in the world. After Rio Tinto closed the mine, the very last of the large pink and blue gems were sold to the highest bidder in an invitation-only closed auction. Rachel Papazzoni was given exclusive access to see them before the final tender.
Perth jeweller Linny's is getting ready to bid for Argyle pink diamonds one last time. It's one of about 100 jewellers across the globe that's been invited to take part in the final silent auction.
It comes with a bit of sadness, but also we've been lucky enough to work with them for such a long period of time that it's presented us with some great design opportunities.
It's their rarity and colour, from blushing pink to vibrant red, that makes the precious jewels sought after across the world.
This little group of 3 diamonds here, on their own, over $2 million.
Wow, that's incredible.
If these were 3 diamonds of the same size in white diamonds, you might be looking at a combined value, something in the order of $40,000 to $50,000.
Argyle diamonds make up about 90% of all the pinks ever found on Earth. Less than 1 million carats have been discovered. Prices for the tender diamonds have risen more than 600% during the past 20 years. Pinks might be rare, but this is about as rare as it comes. This is the Argyle pink diamond tiara, worth more than $5 million. What's also rare, an inside look at the final tender diamonds before they're sold. At secret locations around the world, Michelle Shering has been showing the gems to potential buyers. The closed auction includes 24 carats of exceptionally rare blue and violet diamonds, retrieved from the Argyle mine during its final years.
We have seen such a broad array of colours, but we're really looking at the pinnacle of the production here.
There are 5 headline stones that are expected to attract the highest bids. This is the Argyle Eclipse. It's the hero of the hero diamonds in this tender. And at 3.47 carats, it's the largest diamond on offer. Mining at Argyle in the remote Kimberley region of Western Australia began in the early 1980s. In just a couple of years, it became the biggest diamond mine in the world, ultimately producing 865 million carats of mostly white stones. Just a fraction have been pink.
Everything that we've put through as our pink signature tenders every year for the last 38 years would pretty much fit in about 2 champagne glasses.
Danish jeweller Ulrik Hartmann has been bidding for pinks for 15 years.
I will miss that special occasion where you sit with literally 1 year's special harvest of the finest stones in front of you.
In all the years of the auction, the final amounts paid for the tender diamonds have never been revealed, so it's unlikely we'll find out how much these stones will sell for. But Ulrik Hartmann says you can't put a price on history.
It's not possible to buy 1 centimetre of a Picasso painting or a small part of a Rolls-Royce car, but actually you can buy a small Argyle pink diamond and you will still have a very rare, exceptional piece of jewellery.
And a piece of Australia that won't be available for much longer.
It's a pandemic side effect no one needs right now as we try to enjoy the festive season. There's a shortage of champagne in Australia, forcing retailers to restrict purchases of some brands. But local sparkling winemakers say their fizz is just as good as the French, and they're hoping more people will make the switch, as Clint Jasper reports.
The silly season is just around the corner, and Australians love to celebrate with fizz. But this year, there's a problem.
Getting a container of wine from Champagne or from anywhere in Europe to Australia is pretty much a 3-month exercise.
Importers have needed a strong relationship with champagne houses because the French committee that determines how much is produced each year cut production when the world went into lockdown. Then, frosts took out around 35% of this year's vintage.
You fast forward to now, when things have opened up again, and that knock-on effect has been felt. There's just far less champagne, but the demand has come back kind of tenfold.
Australians are consistently among the top drinkers of champagne in the world. Summer is when demand peaks, so this year retailers have been forced to ration supplies.
Generally, you see the big retailers discounting champagne over the Christmas time. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
How we make the method traditional wines as well.
Australian bubbles are becoming globally recognised for their quality. Decanter magazine declared Tasmania's House of Arras the best sparkling wine in the world in 2020, and it's hoped that'll boost the profile of local fizz among consumers.
There's a price bracket, I think, of about $30 to $50 of Australian sparkling wine. That's a pretty high level of quality that would outshine, I think, any entry-level champagne, certainly.
Here at Yering Estate, sparkling is kept in the bottle for more than a decade. Like many Australian winemakers, it produces sparkling wine using the only method that's permitted for making champagne. And that's why they believe it's a good substitute for imported fizz. But the die-hard champagne fans tend to disagree.
Champagne is in a league of its own completely. And if you don't believe me, you simply just have to look at what people would be willing to spend on a single bottle of champagne.
And there's a core group of drinkers that are just as obsessed with the culture as they are with the bubbles.
I think it's very hard to envision someone who is on the champagne journey trading out into a local sparkling wine.
The orders flying off the shelves at this warehouse are evidence people are committed to champagne.
This trend has happened before. There is a correlation, which is really quite interesting, between a global economic crisis and an increase in champagne sales.
It happened in 2008 and it's happening again. But this time around, champagne prices will be rising along with a whole host of other staple food and grocery items experiencing inflationary pressures.
When that cork comes off, it's pretty hard to tell the difference.
So if local winemakers can get their message of quality across, they might have a better chance of wooing the champagne crowd.
And that's all from this Best of the Business Summer Series special. For more stories, head to the ABC News website or jump onto iView. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.